This is Pat Biondi here with the Elevate Movement Podcast, here with head coach of Michigan Baseball, Erik Bakich. EB, thank you for joining me today, man. It's great to be able to get together and catch up.
Excited to be here with you.
Players.
Got Michigan baseball players interrupting. We'll have to cut this part out, right?
Go Blue!
That's the authenticity of it, right?
That's right. No, anything for you, Patty.
Yeah,
Great leader. First captain of our coaching staff. When our coaching staff got here, it was very apparent what the leadership needed to be and who needed to set that standard. And Pat Biondi was our captain that year, and it's great to see him not only succeed. I'm giving you a plug here, but
I appreciate it.
Great to see him not only succeed in professional baseball, but start something that inspires and makes an impact. And so whatever it is you're doing, I'm happy to be a part of it because I know it's going to be great. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about inspiration. You know, I remember in the 1 year that I spent with you, you talked a little bit about your college coach, Coach LeClair, and what he meant to you as you graduated, got into coaching, and even to, Coach Schnabel and other coaches that you played with at East Carolina.
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell a little bit about that story for people that don't know it, and then just kind of explain, how that his influence has impacted your life as a person, as a coach, and kind of what coaching means to you and why you do it?
Sure. So Keith LeClair, for those who don't know, he was the fastest coach in NCAA baseball history to reach 350 wins under the age of 35. So starting out as a very young head coach at Western Carolina University and then moving on to East Carolina University where I played, he had a ton of success right away and was just a rising star. His trajectory was to the moon. Would have been, without question, one of, if not the best college coaches in the game. And a year after I got done playing, he developed some health problems and was actually diagnosed in August of 2001 with Lou Gehrig's disease, with ALS. The disease attacked him very rapidly. Within less than a year's time, he lost the ability to talk, he had a wife and 2 young kids. So heartbreaking story, but lost all muscle function. As everyone who's familiar with what ALS does, your mind stays sharp as a tack, but you just lose, just everything you take for granted. Breathing, you're on a ventilator, eating, he's on a feeding tube. The only thing he could actually do after a certain amount of time was blink. So communicating was very hard. And they found a way. They attached a computer screen to his wheelchair with this laser that bounced a signal right off his eye onto the screen, and letter for letter and word for word he could then write out sentences and hit an animate button and the computer voice would talk for him. And so you got to see in these conversations with his computer that his mind was still extremely sharp, still witty, still funny, still had an unbelievable sense of humor, still the same coach. And just thinking about his struggle, he fought a 5-year battle, and at any time he could have just given in and allowed himself to pass away, and he never did. And he used that adversity and that struggle to inspire other people, and he ended up making an even bigger impact on the world through his struggle and through his fight with Lou Gehrig's disease than maybe he would have or did as a college coach. Instead of positively impacting a few hundred college kids, he impacted thousands of people because his perspective had shifted and his message was very clear. He talked about how his priorities used to be just baseball, and coaching. And through this battle with Lou Gehrig's disease and through this fight, he realized the number one priority in his life was his relationship with God. Number 2 was his family, and then number 3 was baseball. And so he would start to write. He figured out not only how to communicate with people but with this machine, but also how to now send emails and how to write stories and how to publish articles. And so before you know it, he's sending these daily devotionals where this perspective and these messages were coming through. And it wasn't always biblical in nature, but it was just stories in baseball and how this perspective was evident through these stories that he would share, and he would send them to former players, coaching colleagues, and we would get them and we would forward them to our family and friends, and they would forward them to their family and friends, and everybody, young, old, sick, healthy, could resonate with this type of message about prioritizing things in your life. And got very tough at the end. He lost that ability to blink. And I think during this time where it was really difficult, where people, at least coaches, that he had a massive inspiration on, former players who have turned into coaches, really gained some perspective that have turned into yearly lessons with our own teams. He lost that ability to blink. His eyes would get dried out and infected. They'd have to put gel solution in his eyes. They'd have to stitch his eyelids shut at night just so he could sleep. And the perspective and the thought was, you think you're having a bad day? You think you got struggles? For me, if I ever think I'm having a bad day, I just think about Coach LeClair. Compared to what Coach LeClair went through, I only have good days and great days. And so I know he had that same type of effect on a lot of people. And I think at coaching college baseball, or just young athletes in general, when they have that type of perspective, any type of perspective shift, where they maybe get the target off of themselves and think about other people, and think about other people in the world who do struggle maybe more than an athlete would with a sore ankle, or their custom gear not fitting quite right. That they realize how great they have it. So we say in our program, as only good days and great days. And we talk about compared to what, meaning we got it pretty good. We're very lucky and fortunate to be where we are. And all the student athletes here at Michigan, they're lucky and fortunate to be at. It's an unbelievable place, and you just want to have that appreciation every day. And so Coach LeClair has been a huge inspiration in my life, of giving me that type of perspective, the gratitude for certain things that maybe all of us take for granted on a daily basis. But he's the reason I got into coaching. I switched my major. I realized right away I wanted to do what he did, and he's the reason I myself and Coach Schnabel, our assistant coach, we were teammates together, but we both wear number 23. There's actually 6 college coaches today that all wear number 23, that all played on those East Carolina teams in 1999 and 2000, that made a promise to Coach LeClair before he passed away that we would continue his inspiration, continue his legacy, and would get to Omaha for him, because he was 2 games away in 2001, lost in the Super Regionals, and never got to go. So there's a lot of people that were inspired by his story, but a group of us coaches that want to carry that torch and guide our teams to Omaha, not only for our players and families and schools, but also for him and the impact that he made on all of us.
So, one of the things I remember in the year that we spent together, even while it was going on and then looking back, I remember thinking that a lot of what we were doing was bigger than baseball. So like a lot of, you brought up the perspective, what were they, perspective posters that we made?
Right.
We did stuff like that. We would constantly be talking about core values and just different things that apply to baseball, like apply to any sport, but were also a foundation for you to be more responsible as an individual, to be more productive as an individual, and have a better perspective. When you got into coaching, and as you have continued now, it's been 8-9 years that you've been a head coach in college baseball?
10, yeah.
10.
This is year 10.
Year 10. Man,
Wow.
remember when you were the youngest coach in college baseball? You're getting old now.
I'm an old man now.
Nah,
Yeah.
you're still young. But, I always felt that was a big part of why you wanted to coach. What do you feel like your biggest inspiration outside of Coach LeClair, if you talk about what impact you want to have on players, what is your reason for coaching?
Yeah, you're right. I got into it because of Coach LeClair, and then from there I was very lucky to be surrounded by some unbelievable people right away. So Coach LeClair, he played for and coached with Jack Leggett at Western Carolina, and Coach Leggett then moved on to be the head coach at Clemson. And Coach LeClair set me up to be the volunteer coach at Clemson in 2002. And when I got there, I was, talk about being in the right place at the right time. I walked in to a situation where the head coach, Jack Leggett, the assistant coach, Tim Corbin, and the pitching coach, Kevin O'Sullivan, those are 3 Hall of Fame coaches now, head coaches now.
I coached at Vanderbilt, Florida.
Yeah, Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt, who's won a national championship in the last few years. Kevin O'Sullivan at Florida, who's won a national championship in the last couple of years. I mean, these are, the best of the best, and I get to share an office with those 2 guys and be on the staff with the 3 of them. And so for me, I was a sponge and just learn as much as I possibly could. And so those guys, the player-coach relationship in the bond is very special, and I had that and will always have that with Coach LeClair. The coaching mentors, the guys that, kind of from the other side of things, seeing the other side of the curtain, those 3 are the 3 mentors that I have, and I feel very, very lucky and fortunate not only to be surrounded by a bunch of great coaches and at a lot of great schools, but to have those 3 guys as rocks, as just stable forces of just knowing how to do it, being about the right things, being great people, being totally committed to the student athlete, to their experience. And so having a special season at Clemson and seeing Coach Leggett run his program, and then getting to go to Vanderbilt with Coach Corbin and being an assistant coach for him for 7 years, and seeing how he ran his program, I would say that those 3 guys, and Tim Corbin in particular, along with his wife Maggie, were maybe some of the biggest influences on how to coach and being about the right things. And the right things are not just winning games, but understanding that higher calling, the things that you alluded to, is you're coaching men who need to become men, successful men.
18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids that are still maturing and becoming those people. Yeah.
Still and becoming, they're going to be future husbands. Yeah. They're going to be future fathers. They're going to be community leaders. They're going to start this. They're going to start their own companies. And how can we add value to them? How can we add life skills that are going to help them succeed in all of those areas? And by shifting that target and putting a lot of emphasis on those teams, those things, you end up with a great person who ends up being a great teammate. And then you just seem to have the winning part of it just kind of takes care of itself. Instead of focusing on the outcome of just the wins and the losses, but putting it on more character traits and standards of behaviors within the program, the results just, not that it's perfect and works every time. We haven't won a national championship yet, but I think those things are coming. I think that's, the programs that put the emphasis on people development and developing the individual person, I think they're doing it right. And so I'd like to think we're doing those things.
I feel like, earlier this fall we sat down and just talked for a half hour, and one of the things we talked about, and I found it really interesting because when I was in college, it was all about how can our team be as good as it can be, how can we do the right things, achieve what we want to achieve. And it's taken me getting into pro ball and being in different environments to kind of realize that what I was striving for at that time was more of interpersonal relationships than it was what you're doing at the field, what you're doing in the locker room. Like, we talked a little bit about just that bond, right, of when you really get to know your teammates as brothers, as people, as opposed to how can I get that person to be the best baseball player. Like, there's some sort of transformation that kind of takes over, and it's hard to put a word on it or explain it. But, like, can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the teams that you've coached, been around, and just how to cultivate that type of bond that is bigger than baseball but translates onto the field?
Sure. I think probably the easiest way to explain that is every kid that comes into the program is a high achiever. He's a good student. He was a star in high school. And so maybe the target for him is right on his own chest, and he's coming in as an independent person. And not that you can't have an ego, because if you want to be the best and you want to be a high achiever, that means you've got an ego, and that's okay. But the thing that we talk about here, as you know, is blending your ego within the team. And you can have an I in team, but it can't be independent. It has to be interdependent. And when you walk into that classroom for the first time or that locker room for the first time, you have to have as much energy devoted to the guy to your left and the guy to your right as you do on yourself. And I think where that magic comes from is, instead of just Pat Biondi just trying to make Pat Biondi the best he can be, now you invest in 34 other teammates, and then what do? They turn right around and invest right back in you. And you end up having 34 people lifting you up, boosting you up. I mean, you remember the weight room, and like you're going for a squat max or a bench max, or you're doing something as a team that involves some type of conditioning, like those 300s we used to run. And you got everybody, we still run, you got everybody just cheering you on. And it's just this added boost. It's this extra something in the tank that you just figure it out. You find out you've got it when you've got 34 people genuinely pulling the rope in the same direction as you, instead of a bunch of individuals all just thinking about their own statistics or their own results or how they can get the job or move on to the next step of their career. But you have guys that totally invest in that team concept. I think that's something that the best teams, the championship teams, they have that.
I agree. I think, we've talked about this before, and I've heard other people talk about it. Like, once you get into pro baseball, you realize how special that team atmosphere is in college, because in pro baseball you have that atmosphere where everyone's trying to make it to the major leagues, and especially in the minor leagues, like, winning is good, but it's not paramount. The development and your own achievement is almost always above what the team's doing. And I've kind of been lucky to play on some teams that had that natural camaraderie, just because we played together for a while, we really got to know each other. But I think for me, as I look back now, like what you just described, there's times in college where it can be like a little rah-rah, like a little fake in a way, like you're trying to almost like make that camaraderie happen. Right. And as I look back now, there's times where I wish I wish I would have just invested in the people more as people, without like any agenda of us winning games. And the irony is that when you do that, like, that thing you're looking for starts to happen on its own, right? Right. So it's such a crazy thing. One of the books that you recommended to me, and I'd recommend it, Catching Fire, I think it was called. Stealing Fire. Yeah. Just talked about some really interesting things about how to create that type of environment, how to bring groups of people together and have that synergy. And I think, something you said earlier too about perspective. The perspective shift is good, like the mindset of I'm here and there's people that are really struggling, like I'm lucky, is good. But I think even more than that is we just naturally think about ourselves all the time. Right. And it's not wrong or bad, it's just the way it is. Like, as a person, you're constantly looking at the world through your perspective. And so anytime you can take a step back and realize there's a lot more out there than just what I'm going through right now, it helps you to connect with other people when maybe you might be too caught up in like the little things that are going on in your life. That's kind of how I've started to look at it. And it's still really difficult though in a team atmosphere to make that happen, because you have so many different personalities from different places and at different points in their life that you're trying to get together on the same page. Oh, yeah. It's kind of I'm sure as a coach you've felt that that's like a huge challenge. It always is, especially more today than ever, because you have one societal norm with all adolescents today, and that's social media. Right. And what social media is to teenagers is a status symbol, and their wealth is maybe not necessarily money and finances. Their wealth is their retweets and their likes and their favorites and their Instagram stories that are popular, and it becomes this status symbol. But what they're doing is they're on it all the time. Not that I'm going to get into it being a time sink and there's other things they could do, but they're looking at everybody else's personal highlight reels all the time, and they're comparing what they're seeing to somebody could be just having an okay day but post something that makes it look like it's the greatest day ever. And now maybe they're comparing themselves to
somebody else and what they're doing instead of just, if they are going to focus on themselves, focus on the things they can control.
Yeah.
You know, bringing their best effort, having their most positive attitude they can possibly have for the team. And it's not about what someone else is doing. It's you run your fastest race. Doesn't matter how fast someone else can run. You just get on the line and run as fast as you can. And when you do that and you bring the things that you can control, which we talk about it as, you know, you can control your attitude, your perspective, your effort, and you don't worry about all the external things, then you have another chance to be a part of something special, because now everybody again is aligned.
What are some other ways that you try to promote that or instill that in your team? You know,
Well, we create standards. I think, you know, every team talks a lot about culture. There's a lot of books on culture and read a lot of good ones. You know, you mentioned the one, but I love the book Legacy about the New Zealand All Blacks. Love the book The Culture Code. Love the book Fourth and Goal Every Day. Love the book Scoreboard Takes Care of Itself. You know, anything where the players know that they are part of something bigger than themselves. So the culture of the program or each team has a set of behavioral standards. And those behavioral standards are what drive the culture, but the culture also tells them what those behaviors are. So it's this cycle that continues. Because those behaviors are going to make you part of an environment that is either going to create a positive experience or not.
it's subconscious. It becomes just the normal.
And so I think having a team that understands and it's very clear and it's articulated within the group, and the transparency is 100%, that this is what we're all about. These are the behaviors, these are the standards of our program, this is what we do. And then the goal of the upperclassmen, much like you did in 2013, becomes to leave the jersey in a better place. You know you're going to be influencing a future generation of Michigan baseball players, or future baseball, or future whatever, for whatever organization. And that's the type of legacy that you want to leave behind. Is maybe you are about something that you pass on to a youngster, he passes that on, and now you have this deep connection through multiple teams, even though you didn't even play together, right? And so I think we have finally reached that point where I would say this year, it's taken 7 years, and this year is the first year where it felt like the culture, the standards, the behaviors were implemented from day one, meeting one.
From the team.
From the upperclassmen.
Yeah.
From the upperclassmen. You know, because it's hard. It's hard coming to college. The academics are tougher. The athletics are much faster. Everybody's trying to have a social life and fit in and make new friends. Everybody's uncomfortable because they're away from...
You're still trying to figure yourself out in a lot of ways.
You're figuring a lot of things out. It's a huge transition. And so having at least that part of it to where you know the expectations, you know what the standards are of the team polices itself and holds each other accountable. I think that only helps the group dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. What are some things, so, you know, we talked a little bit about social media. When you're recruiting now and you're looking at different players, obviously you're looking for talent and you're looking for guys that can produce at a high level, but there's a lot of talented players out there. So what are some other things that you look at? I mean, how deep are you going into the makeup of someone, into the mindset and character and like all of that when you're looking at someone that's going to fit into your program?
Sure. Well, the recruiting piece, this has been an evolution because there didn't used to be a roster cap. You know, it's only been, you know, less than 10 years now where you had to have a hard line 35 men on your roster. And so what you have to do now is be a lot more strategic. And it can't just be, hey, that guy's a good player, he threw 92, let's get him. Now, I think more than ever, especially with just the way adolescents are today, where the number one team killer is anyone, if you anyone who investigates this, number one team killer, whether it's an athletic team, corporation, a business, a mom and pop company, is selfish behaviors. And so making sure you're picking players, recruiting players that align with your team culture has become just as important, if not more important, than the physical skill set that they bring. So evaluating physical talent is actually the easiest part of recruiting. Going out there and watching somebody's skills, watching their tools as a baseball player, a lot of people can do that. And then from there, making sure that their academic values align with a school like Michigan, where education is extremely important to them. And then from there, making sure that the character traits, how these particular kids have been raised, getting to know not only them but their parents, becomes extremely important. If a kid has been raised for 18 years a certain way that doesn't align with the values of your program, if a kid has been allowed to just run amok, do whatever he wants, have zero discipline, zero accountability, and you have a program that has discipline in it, it's going to be a struggle for him. It's not good for him, and it's not good for the team, right? And sometimes you have to make those difficult decisions in the recruiting process and find that word that we all talk about. Is he the right fit? Are we the right fit for him? Is he the right fit for us? And that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for the right fit, a kid who is not only a supremely talented player, but is a good student and an awesome makeup kid.
Is there a way, or a few ways maybe, that from the time you got to Michigan and you look back and reflect on where you were at as a coach to now, that you feel like you've changed, or things that you've maybe just made amendments to and kind of grown from when you were 32 to, I won't get into how old you're.
I'm 41. It's all right. Yeah. I think it's directly tied in with being a parent. I
remember you talking about that even when we were, before you had Bo, or like right when you had Bo, you talked a little bit about as soon as you had Colt, your perspective changed.
Right.
Like you understood parents more when you were recruiting.
Exactly right. Yeah, I used to think parents were crazy, and then I had a kid and I thought my kid was the best kid ever, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I understand where they're coming from. And so, yeah, I think as you just have more repetitions parenting and the coaching philosophies and parenting philosophies, I mean, they're really not that dissimilar. I mean, my kids are young. They're 9, 6, and 4, so maybe it's not exactly like an 18 to 22-year-old, but having values and having beliefs, those foundational skills, what we talk about in our home is the same as what we talk about in the classroom here. And so aligning ourselves as coaches with parents who have raised their kids with those same values, which, not that we have them spelled out, but it's about serving other people and being humble off the field, and it's playing with a certain style on the field with with confidence and being aggressive and being tough and all those things. And so, again, not that we have some type of acronym for it, but there's just certain people have raised their children like that, and others haven't, and both ways can be successful. It's no different than hitting a baseball. Parenting's been around a long time, and but we just want to make sure in the 4-year window that we have these players, that this is what we lay it out. We spell it out in the recruiting process. This is what our program is about, and we take a tremendous amount of time. We bring kids on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 visits. We have them multiple conversations. We would never just watch somebody play once and throw an offer out to them, because it's so important to make sure it's the right fit.
Yeah, I remember even when I was a senior, I had a different coaching staff for my freshman through junior years, and not even that coaching staff, but just in general in recruiting, there's sometimes this present a certain look or face of the program to try to be attractive to recruits. I remember one of the first times that I hosted someone, you said, look, they ask you questions, you can tell them exactly what you think. Like, you think what we're doing is stupid right now, or like you hate it, you can tell them. Just be honest about what we're doing, because we want guys to want to be here for what we do. I think that transparency is important in a program, you know, not
Yeah.
always there
Right.
in every program.
Yeah, I don't think you can sugarcoat anything, and you never want to overpromise and underdeliver. And you want people to know exactly if this is going to work, and this culture is going to work, and this system and this team, and we're going to thrive and be the best we can possibly be. Then, you know, there can't be any disillusions of or false pretenses or anything that isn't real and isn't what it is. That would compromise the integrity of the program, and that would violate the trust that you're trying to build with each one of these guys. Because at the end of the day, you know, whether you're building a national championship baseball program, or you're in sales or starting your own company, it's about the relationships that you build with people. I mean, as much as people are coming to Michigan because it's Michigan, they're also heavily invested in the relationship you're going to have, not just the 4 years you're with them, but the 40 years after that.
I think Michigan is Michigan because of the people that are there, you know, like I remember Mike Barwis talked about this one time. I forget the exact quote, but he basically said, like, the buildings won't love you back, like
Right.
the people will. And I think, you know, that speaks to anywhere, but at Michigan, you know, whether it's in the classroom and you have professors that are, you know, at the top of their field writing half of the textbooks that you're learning from,
Right, yeah.
or you have other students.
Yeah, there's
that
no
are-
arguing when the professor wrote the textbook.
So you have like elite people teaching you. You have elite students that you're going to class with that the reason you're here might be for baseball. They're here to go to school and study what they're doing, and they're going to excel in that field. The coaches are at the head of that. You know, you have Jim Harbaugh, you have Beeline, like you have elite Hutch, you have elite coaches everywhere. So I think it's the people at
Yeah.
Michigan is why it's so appealing.
Absolutely. And the standards and the foundations of what this athletic department and school are founded on. It's in our fight song about being the leaders and best, you know, talking about the team. That means you put the team and other people ahead of yourself. It builds in, you know, kind of the antidote for those selfish behaviors if they start to arise. And the most successful coaches that I've seen here, whether it's Bo Schembechler way back when, or Coach Hutchins or Coach Beeline now, they understand that. And I hear them talk about protecting and defending the Block M, because those are the things it's about.
So you used the buzzword toughness earlier, and it just brought me back to a staple of the Michigan baseball program. Was it mental toughness
Mental
Wednesdays?
Toughness Wednesday, yeah, no doubt.
A phrase that struck both fear and maybe a little bit of excitement into the team, especially that first year when we weren't quite sure how crazy you were. We knew we were going to do some stuff, but we weren't sure like exactly where this was going to go, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the intent behind Mental Toughness Wednesdays, and then maybe after that we'll talk a little bit about what real toughness is and what
Sure.
that means in a program.
Well, a lot of what mental toughness has to do with is just getting out of your comfort zone, right? And so running 300s is the one standard that we've always done here for the last 7 years. We've run 300s. And it starts with maybe 5 of them, and it ends up at the end of the fall semester you run 7 or 8 of them. And it's timed, and you have a certain amount of rest time, and they're challenging. They're very tough, and not everybody can pass them. But you see a couple of things. Number one, you see team camaraderie. Because you see guys, if they were running them by themselves, they would not be able to do it. All right, so it's gets that pack mentality just, you know, really emphasized without even having to talk about it, because everybody grasps it. They see it. They feel it. They feel the strength within the group. And they feel that when they're being encouraged, and how do you know you need encouragement? If you have a pulse, you need encouragement, right? And that's one organic way, because it's shared. It's even if it's a struggle, it's a shared struggle, and everyone's doing it together, right? It's not just one person doing it; the team is doing it. And there's a lot of guys, as you remember, that might not have made it if they didn't have somebody pushing them. The second thing is it gives every single guy a glimpse into what his true capability is. And if he thinks the tank is empty, it allows him to realize, no, you got more in there. You just maybe have to dig a little deeper or go to a place you haven't gone to before. And I think it's a great life lesson for just overcoming adversity. When you think maybe you're beat, or you think you don't have anything left to give, no, you really do. And I ran him as a player, and all the teams I've been a part of have done it, and just seen incredible results, almost like a rallying cry, like, down a couple of runs in the 8th inning. You just know you've got this confidence from some of the mental toughness training that you've done in your preparation. Just makes you feel like you've got an edge to come out over the competition.
I just want to make it clear, Mental Toughness Wednesday is not just 300s. When I think of Mental Toughness Wednesdays, I remember carrying logs around and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
That was year one. That was a little different, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. But, okay, so, even that first year we were working with Brian Kane a lot, but basically on the mental side of the game, we were talking about, in a way, being mindful, like being aware of when maybe you're mentally not where you want to be. We used to call it red lights.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into those phases of the game speeds up,
Mm-hmm.
you're anxious, you're all these different things, and learning how to refocus. I think my perspective on toughness has changed a lot certainly from high school to now, even from college, even from probably a couple of years to now. Like, my perspective on that has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach toughness, and when the word is thrown out in general, I feel like there's this, like, I'm going to power through it, like I'm stronger, I can handle anything type of, like, bravado, like a male bravado associated with it. I feel like in baseball specifically, it might be the opposite of that. Like, it might be more about, like, things aren't going to go your way on the baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just the reality of the game. It's a really difficult game. You fail a lot. Like, things can go really bad. You can feel awful.
Sure.
So to me, like, that toughness is more about maintaining that confidence and belief,
Mm-hmm.
even when those things are going a different direction than you want them to.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that with your team? How do you teach that?
Yeah. So, and this has been a shift as well, because like you said, the old school way of talking about toughness was more physical
Mm-hmm.
toughness. Who's stronger, who's bigger, faster, stronger, can play through pain, and that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is being a quick recovery kid. And so, can you get back to the middle, right? Baseball is a game of consistency. What separates AAA guys from guys who get to the big leagues? It's at a certain point, the talent from the neck down starts to even out, right? And it's the separators, the talent from the neck up. And it really comes down to consistency. And so, how can we get to the middle, right? And so, being a quick recovery kid in college is, think about all the areas where that could apply. You bomb a test, right? Is that going to sink your entire semester academically, or can you recover quick? And can you make up for it the next week, the next paper, the next exam, whatever, right? You have an 0 for 4 day. Does that mean you're going to have an 0 for 12 weekend, or can you recover quick? Or even within one at-bat to the next. And so, you could apply that to so many things where you have a setback. Can you recover quick mentally? Same thing on the other side. You have a great game, right? You do something awesome. Well, are you going to have the pom-poms out and be riding that high, or can you get back to the middle, right, and be consistent? That's toughness. Toughness is being a quick recovery kid, being able to overcome, but just being able to get back to that level where that peak performance exists. So you don't have the ebbs and flows and vicissitudes that are already built into the game.
So, when you go as a player, when you go through those valleys, when you are 0 for 4, 0 for 8, right? I feel like a lot of the culture in sports is like, you should act according to how things are going. So, like, for example, if you're watching a Major League playoff game and you strike out to lose a series, if you're laughing after, people are gonna, like, look at me and say, like, oh, he doesn't care, or
Mm-hmm.
like, he's not invested. But at the same time, like, you moping and you doing, let's not say to end a series, let's say game 4, like going into game 5,
Mm-hmm.
you being down about it doesn't help your performance in the next game. So, like, how do you help young players understand that it's okay to be confident and to still be happy and enjoy going to the field and doing what you're doing, even if you're 0 for your last 8. You know what I mean? Does that make
Sure.
sense, that question?
And it's hard. It's hard when you don't have the success, when, especially for the people that are the most invested, that have put in the most time with their preparation. And, you know, I still think the game has a funny way of rewarding the guys that work the hardest. It may not always be on your watch,
Mhm.
right? Like, you know, we haven't won a national championship yet, but it's coming, right? If it was on our watch, we'd have 6 in a row now, right? And so I just think trusting the process. You know, you've all heard that great story, sort of a fable about watering bamboo, right? And you water bamboo for an entire year and nothing happens. You know, you water bamboo the second year, nothing happens. You water bamboo the entire third year, and nothing happens. You keep watering the bamboo every day. So at some point in the 4th year, it grows 90 feet in 6 weeks, right? And it's just, that's growth. If you just keep the process, meaning just keep trying to improve, just keep trying to get better, even if it's 1%, 1 inch, 1/10 of a second, it doesn't matter. Just each day is an opportunity to just become a little bit better at something. Even if you don't get the results that you want, but you put the target on something else. Okay, my swing doesn't feel great right now. I don't feel like I'm going to make hard contact, but I can add value in another way, right? I may get taken out of the lineup, but I'm going to be the best dugout energy guy I can possibly be, or I'm going to get on a chart and try to pick pitches and help my team win. Just get the target off of yourself. The game will come back around to you. It just kind of always does.
Yeah.
But it seems to take longer for the guys that are totally wrapped up into themselves and their own results and put their own emotions and feelings ahead of the team, right? So when a guy doesn't do well and he makes a scene in the dugout, I'm not saying you can't be emotional and spike a helmet once in a while. Like, guys get upset, and that's okay. But when it's all the time, or when it's exaggerated, and you know, or your defense mechanism is to act like you don't care when you don't do well after a loss, everyone knows you care. You know, so laughing it off is disrespectful to the people that are fully invested as well. So I just think you just try to be as consistent as you possibly can. Your process has to be about improvement and growth. And you just try to avoid those pitfalls of having those extreme lows and those extreme highs.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I see guys get into trouble when they just get off center a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Loss of perspective,
Mhm.
right? I think for me personally, the emotional side of it is something that it's still an ongoing process, but like learning that the emotion isn't necessarily true. So like, just because you feel a certain way, it doesn't mean that you have to feel that way for the next 2 days, week. Like, you have a choice of feeding that emotion or choosing to change your thought process, which is something we talk about, but like, there's a difference between having the knowledge and really understanding it and like being able to apply it in your own life, right?
No question.
I feel your bamboo story reminded me too of just like culture you talked about earlier and how like it's just taking root. I feel like there's a reality to that in whether it's your team or personally. Like, there's a time when you have to keep watering, keep like telling yourself this, keep telling yourself, and then eventually it becomes natural.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you can't really force that process. Like, it just has to take root on its own.
Right.
But I think that's something that's really tough, especially for athletes, to understand when you're so used to do something, get a result. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do something, get a result. When it's not there, that can be frustrating and kind of like put a roadblock in your process.
Well, and that's sports' natural weeding out processes.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that, you know, they do want that. It's the microwave, you know, mindset. They want it right now. And when it doesn't come right now, you know, what are you going to do? You know, you have a response, you know, and you can quit or transfer or shut it down or do something else, or you stick with it, right? And I just think that the game comes around for everybody at some point, and but it's the response that people that can control. They can't control necessarily what happens, but they can't control their response.
What are some of your goals for this Michigan baseball team this upcoming year?
Well, they're the highest, and the guys, the team, I turned it over to them, and we've talked about. See, it's almost you can have your vision, and these are all the things that take place in June, right? You can want to win a national championship and win a super regional and a regional championship and the Big Ten tournament and the regular season Big Ten and sweep all of our rivals and be the winningest team in program history. But again, that's the destination. And we need to get back to, if you start asking the how questions, how do you do all those things? You'll start a filtering process and just keep saying how. All the way down, it gets down to today. Every time. If you want to win a national championship, if you want to play in the big leagues, and you start asking, how do you do that? And you keep asking that how question, it gets down to one day at a time, one pitch at a time, one breath at a time, one podcast at a time, one meeting at a time, one whatever at a time. And then you say, okay, well, why is this breath so important? Why is this meeting so important? Why is this rep so important? Why is this whatever so important? Well, then, because it answers the question all the way up to the top. Well, why? Because you want to achieve at the highest level. So for me, that's the easiest way to explain it. Whatever your goals are, you better be able to answer how all the way down, and it's going to come down to whatever you're doing right now in the present moment. And then why are you doing that? Because it's going to all the way up answer whatever your highest goal is.
I think that's a pretty good way to end it right there. Pretty good message. Be present.
All right.
All the cliches we talk about in a practical application. So I'm excited to see what this team does. It's always great catching up with you, EB.
You too, Patty B. Thank you,
brother.
brother. All right. Yep. Go Blue.
Go Blue.
And go Mets.